The topic of today's mini class is ruling over the other, exploring the halachic, the Jewish legal relationship with the Arab community in the state of Israel. You know, for 2,000 years, or over 2,000 years, the Jew has always looked at the other with great suspicion. After all, for thousands of years, the non-Jew has been, in many ways, the enemy of the Jews and has caused millions of Jews to be murdered, to be exiled from one nation to another nation. The other has always been the enemy. But that's not the ultimate approach of how the Jew should engage with the other. We're told that the temple is a place, Beit Tfilah, is a house of prayer, l'chol ha'amim, for all nations of the world, that all nations of the world are welcome to come to the temple and create a romantic rendezvous with God. And so the question is, when we live in Israel and we're in a position of strength, although we do have a significant challenge of terrorism, how do we, in a position of strength, engage with the other that lives in our community? How do we treat them with respect? We have a responsibility as citizens of the state of Israel to recognize the fact that our goal is, as God tells Abraham, "V'nivruchu v'cha kol mishpachot ha'adama," that through the Jewish people, all the nations of the world are to be blessed, that we're to engage and not to retreat, God forbid, from the rest of the world. However, this is a short class, and this is a very elaborate topic, so it's important to put this into perspective. We're going to touch on a few important issues. If anyone has any questions on these issues, they should feel free to email me at president@ots.org.il. That is president@ots.org.il. There is a famous story about a rabbi who's traveling on a plane. He's sitting next to somebody. He begins a conversation with them. The person, after engaging in a 5 or 10 minute conversation with the rabbi, says, "Gee, Rabbi, you're amazing. I understand that you have been studying for years before you became a rabbi. And while I don't know much about my Judaism, I understand that everything that you studied can be summarized in one statement: love thy neighbor as you love yourself." The rabbi appreciated the comment, but yet was quite disturbed. After all, he studied for a decade to prepare for becoming a rabbi. And now all of his study is being summarized in one statement. The rabbi turns to the person next to him and says, "Thank you, but can you tell me what you do?" And the person responds, "Rabbi, I have a very complicated job. I don't think you'll really understand it. I'm an astrophysicist. I have a PhD from MIT. I have a master's from Harvard University. I really don't think you'll understand what exactly I do." And the rabbi responded, "You're 100% right. I won't understand what you do, but I understand that all of those years of training for your master's and for your PhD and your postdoc can really be summarized in one statement: twinkle, twinkle, little star." The truth is that today we're going to do the twinkle, twinkle, little star version of this very important topic. The Torah clearly indicates our responsibility to treat the non-Jew, the other in the state of Israel, with respect. Mishpat echad yeh lechem, kager u'ke'ezrach. You have to have one set of laws for both the citizen, both the Jew, and the ger, the resident who lives in the land of Israel with you. In fact, we're told in the book of Devarim, Lo tochlu kol nevela, while you can't eat any roadkill, any animal that has not been ritually slaughtered. La ger asher b'sharecha, the non-Jew that lives with you, your neighbor, titnana, you should give it, not sell it. You should give it because they're your neighbor. Oh, or if there is a nachri, a non-Jew who's not your neighbor, who doesn't live next to you, who may be just visiting, to that person you can sell it to. We're told that in the times of the Bible, in the times in which Jewish law was able to be fully actualized in the state of Israel, that when there were cities of refuge for people who were involved in accidental homicide, a person who killed both a Jew or a non-Jew had to escape to that city for rehabilitation. The Meiri, one of the major scholars in the 1200s, Rav Menachem ben Shlomo HaMeiri, who lived from 1249 to 1306, writes in one of his important works, Beit HaBechira, literally meaning the chosen house, a commentary basically on the Talmud, tells us that the statement, V'ahavta l'recha kamocha, love thy neighbors, you love yourself, applies to all non-Jews who are not idol worshippers. And that's basically and that includes the Christian and Muslim population. And of course, both codified in the laws of Maimonides and in the laws of the Shulchan Aruch, is the responsibility, based on the Talmud, for us to visit the ill of both Jews and non-Jews, to help in the burial of both Jews and non-Jews, and to make sure that we provide charity for both Jews and non-Jews. Because we are God's partners. We have a responsibility of imitating God. Tov Hashem lakol, that God is interested in the goodness for all. V'rachamav al kol masav, and He has mercy on all of His creations, Jews and non-Jews. And as God's partners, we have the responsibility to do the same. And so it is important to recognize and to look at Jewish law and international law. So from an international law perspective, which we in the State of Israel are bound to and must fully fulfill, the international law reminds us of our responsibility to treat everybody that lives within our borders with respect. But even if we look at the biblical law, it's clear that while the Bible in one place says, Lo yeshvu ba'artzecha, that non-Jews should not live in your land, pen yachtiu, lest they cause you to sin, it is important to realize that that statement is quite limited based on its context and the way it is codified by our rabbinic legal community. According to some, this would not apply to either Muslims or Christians, because it only applies to non-Jews who are idol worshippers, and neither Muslims or Christians are considered idol worshippers. Furthermore, the Ravad, Rabbi Abraham ben David, in his commentary on Maimonides, reminds us, and this is really the normative approach, and that is that it only applied to the 7 Canaanite nations which no longer exist, and therefore this law, or this statement in the Bible, is no longer applicable. Maimonides tells us that any non-Jew can live in the land of Israel and has to be treated with respect in the land of Israel, provided that they're not engaged in idol worship, and speaks in great detail in his Mishnah Torah, in his summary of the oral tradition, that any non-Jew who keeps the 7 Noahide laws, the laws that are the basic universal laws of morality, which include not to profane the oneness of God, not to be involved in any acts of murder, not to eat a limb from a living animal, not to steal, not to be involved in incest, adultery, or rape, and to establish courts of law and ensure justice in our world, that anyone who commits to these ideals has status to live in the land of Israel. And that applies to most non-Jews who live in the land of Israel, our responsibility to treat them with respect. Well, we need to be concerned about our security and about terrorism, and we need to deal with it in a very significant and serious way, which we are in Israel are all aware of. That does not in any way deter us from the responsibility that we have to treat with respect and dignity the majority of the Arab community, the significant majority of the Arab community that wishes to live in peace with Jews in the state of Israel. There's an interesting philosophical perspective about how these 7 Noahide laws are to be viewed. Are they the basic kernel of Judaism? And from there, the rest of the biblical commandments, the rest of the 613 mitzvot sprout? Is the first stage of engagement with God the laws of the 7 Noahide laws? And from the 7 Noahide laws sprout the rest of the Torah? Which would seem to indicate that any non-Jew that is engaged with these 7 Noahide laws, it really represents the kernel, the basic component of what Judaism and morality are all about. That keeping the 7 Noahide laws really represents a partial connection to Judaism, and that Judaism is merely an outgrowth of the 7 Noahide laws? Or are the 7 Noahide laws viewed as universal laws, and it represents what we'd call Kedushat Enoshut, the responsibility and the ethics of humanity, with Judaism, Kedushat Yisrael, with the 613 commandments being a distinct reality? And that's an interesting philosophical question, but at the end of the day, as both Rabbi Soloveitchik and Rabbi Kook have reminded us, part of our mandate of being a distinct people, part of the mandate of chosenness is not superiority, but it is responsibility. Responsibility to engage with the other with respect. And thank God we live at a time in which we have the capacity to engage with the other in strength, with respect, and let us remind ourselves that when we do so, we hasten the coming of Mashiach, because ultimately in the time of Messiah, it will be a time in which all people will be able to live together with their distinct customs and their distinct traditions, but with a sense of mutual respect. Have a wonderful day.